These are the stories Hollywood hoped you'd forget. Stories of actors who knew too much, actresses who trusted the wrong people, musicians whose talents threatened the wrong egos, and rising stars whose sudden downfalls were far too convenient for the powerful. Stories that remind us that fame is not just a spotlight, it is a trap. And once you're inside it, escape is almost impossible. So today we are pulling back the curtain on 15 Hollywood legends whose lives ended in ways that still haunt the industry. Not the sanitized versions you're used to, not the official narratives designed to protect reputations, but the raw, uncomfortable truths, the mysteries, the cover-ups, and the unanswered questions that never went away. This is the real Hollywood, and once you see it, you'll never see the industry the same way again. The uncompromising vision, Barbara Loden. Barbara Loden's disappearance from Hollywood wasn't a slow fading of relevance or a case of an actor stepping away because roles declined. It was something far more disturbing and revealing about the inner workings of the industry. Loden created a masterpiece, Wanda, 1970, and Hollywood responded not with applause or opportunity, but with silence so thick it swallowed her whole. Her vanishing wasn't accidental, it was systemic, calculated, and rooted in the industry's discomfort with women who refused to be manageable. Before she disappeared, Loden had earned genuine respect in the acting world. She won a Tony Award, delivered powerful performances in films like Splendor in the Grass, and married renowned director Elia Kazan, yet none of that protected her from what came next. When she stepped behind the camera for Wanda, she broke a rule Hollywood never forgave. She created something brilliant without permission. She wrote it, directed it, and starred in it at a time when female directors were almost non-existent. And she didn't create some glossy, studio-friendly melodrama. She created a raw, unflinching portrait of a woman drifting through a grim reality, refusing Hollywood's fantasies of redemption, glamour, or emotional packaging. Film historian Michael Barnes notes that Wanda winning the International Critics Prize at Venice should have launched an entire era for Loden. It should have gotten her studios, budgets, and a seat at the artistic table. Instead, it marked the end. Hollywood's reaction was chilling. No calls, no offers, no recognition. She continued teaching, acting, and working on small theater projects, but the industry acted as if she had never existed. Wanda wasn't just ignored, it was buried. Rumors swirled that Loden had been quietly blackballed for being too raw, too independent, and too unwilling to make herself smaller. And when cancer took her life in 1980 at only 48, her disappearance became permanent. She died before living in a world where Wanda would finally be recognized as groundbreaking. Barbara Loden made a masterpiece, then vanished like a ghost Hollywood wanted the world to forget. The actress who walked into the night and never returned, Jean Spangler's story, is one of the most haunting disappearances in Hollywood history, not only because she vanished without a trace, but because the mystery surrounding her final hours remains unsolved even after 7 decades. Spangler wasn't just an actress trying to make it. She was young, magnetic, and finally gaining momentum in her career when she disappeared. But once she went missing, the glamorous world she worked so hard to join responded with indifference, silence, and rumors that have never been fully untangled. On the evening of October 7, 1950, 26-year-old Jean left her Los Angeles home, telling her sister-in-law she was heading out to meet her ex-husband to discuss child support. She promised she'd be home later that night. She never returned. 2 days later, her purse was found in Griffith Park with its handle torn as though ripped from her arm. Inside was a cryptic note. "Kirk can't wait any longer, going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while the mother is away." The name Kirk immediately triggered a media frenzy. Actor Kirk Douglas, who had recently worked with Spangler on Young Man with a Horn, publicly denied any connection. "I don't remember her," he initially said, an odd response considering how closely they'd worked on set. Later, he admitted knowing her casually. The contradiction only deepened public suspicion, but no evidence ever tied him to her disappearance. Then came the next twist. Investigators learned that Jean was allegedly pregnant and possibly attempting to arrange an illegal abortion, a dangerous reality for actresses in the 1950s who were pressured to remain pure, available, and scandal-free. And Dr. Scott? Detectives found no licensed doctor by that name, but they did uncover a network of underground abortionists operating throughout Los Angeles, many protected by corrupt officials. As if this wasn't enough, Jean's connections to notorious gangster Mickey Cohen raised darker theories. She had been romantically linked to Cohen's associate, and some believed she witnessed something she shouldn't have, leading to her disappearance at the hands of organized crime. Despite widespread speculation, an abusive ex-husband, a mob connection, an illegal abortion, a Hollywood cover-up, not a single piece of hard evidence ever surfaced. No body, no confirmed sightings, no final explanation. Jean Spangler stepped into the Hollywood night and was swallowed whole, leaving behind a purse, a note, and one of the most chilling mysteries the industry has ever tried to forget. The actor who escaped Hollywood by vanishing into intelligence work. Philip Ober's disappearance from Hollywood wasn't sudden, it was strategic. He didn't fade out because his career failed. He didn't age out of roles or struggle with the brutal cycles of fame. Instead, he walked away from the industry entirely and entered a world far more secretive, dangerous, and unexpected. International intelligence. It's one of Hollywood's strangest career pivots, and even today, few people realize that the man who once acted alongside Marilyn Monroe and Cary Grant quietly became a U.S. diplomat and intelligence operative. In the 1940s and 50s, Ober was a recognizable face. He appeared in From Here to Eternity, North by Northwest, and countless television shows. He wasn't a superstar, but he was respected, a reliable character actor with presence, precision, and a commanding voice. Directors trusted him. Producers liked him. So when he abruptly stepped away from the camera in the 1960s, people assumed it was temporary. Instead, Ober reinvented himself entirely. He left Hollywood and joined the United States Foreign Service, working for the government in diplomatic and intelligence-adjacent roles. Some accounts suggest he worked closely with the State Department during the height of the Cold War, a time when the U.S. was desperate for well-traveled, charismatic individuals capable of blending into international circles. Former actors, comfortable performing, observing, and moving through social environments, were surprisingly well-suited for such tasks. While details about Ober's intelligence work remain murky, what is clear is that his new career sent him across the globe. He reportedly served in diplomatic positions in Mexico and beyond, navigating tense political climates rather than film sets. Hollywood, which thrives on gossip, barely spoke about him afterward. He had stepped into a realm where secrecy wasn't just expected, it was required. When Ober died in 1982, he left behind two legacies, one as a reliable screen actor and another as a quiet but effective government figure. His story remains proof that some stars don't disappear because they fall. They disappear because they step into a world with no cameras, no scripts, and no applause. The actress destroyed by fame, scandal, and an industry that needed a villain. Kathleen Case's disappearance from Hollywood reveals a pattern that has repeated itself across decades. When tragedy strikes an actor, the industry doesn't extend compassion. It often piles on shame until the person breaks. Case was once positioned as a rising star, but her life became defined by a single horrific accident that the press twisted into a career-ending scandal. In the 1950s, Kathleen Case was beautiful, talented, and poised for major stardom. She was appearing in films, dancing professionally, and had a reputation for working hard and avoiding Hollywood's darker temptations. But in 1959, everything changed in a single instant. Case was involved in a car crash that killed a man, 20-year-old George Paul Bryson. Despite investigators later determining that the accident was not the result of malicious wrongdoing, newspapers pounced on the story. Her name was suddenly everywhere, not because of her performances, but because of the graphic headlines. Reporters branded her reckless, dangerous, unstable, sensationalizing the tragedy to sell papers. And Hollywood, always protective of its image, distanced itself from her. Roles dried up overnight. Offers stopped coming. Studios didn't want her name attached to their films. Rather than defend her, the industry pushed her out. The guilt and depression that followed consumed her. Friends later described her as someone who never emotionally recovered from the crash or the media storm that followed. She retreated from public life, stopped acting, and lived quietly, while the industry that once praised her acted as if she had never existed. Kathleen Case died alone in 1979 at just 45 years old. Her story is one of Hollywood's cruelest patterns. When tragedy strikes, the machine doesn't support its stars. It discards them, letting the weight of public shame crush them. The star who chose silence over stardom and became a myth. Greta Garbo is the rare case of a Hollywood disappearance that wasn't caused by scandal, tragedy, or industry cruelty. It was entirely self-chosen. She walked away at the height of her fame and never looked back, creating a mystery so powerful that it still defines her legacy today. By the early 1930s, Garbo was more than a star. She was a global phenomenon. Her face appeared on posters, newspapers, and billboards in over 40 countries. Her performances in Queen Christina, Anna Karenina, and Camille made her one of the most respected actresses in cinema history. Yet, with all the success, Garbo felt suffocated by Hollywood's constant scrutiny, relentless publicity, and rigid studio demands. She famously said, "I want to be alone," not as an expression of misery, but as a declaration of independence. By 1941, at only 36 years old, Garbo quit acting. Just quit. No farewell performance, no interviews, no final bow. She simply stepped out of Hollywood's spotlight and retreated into a life of intense privacy. Fans waited for a comeback that never came. For decades, paparazzi attempted to photograph her walking the streets of New York, where she lived a quiet, almost monastic life. She avoided interviews, premieres, and public appearances. She didn't write memoirs, didn't cash in on nostalgia, and turned down every role offered to her, including massive studio projects. The industry begged her to return. She refused every time. Yet her disappearance only amplified her legend. She became the original mystery woman of Hollywood, the unattainable icon who proved that walking away from fame could make someone even more famous. When Garbo died in 1990, she left behind no scandal, no tell-all, no dramatic fall from grace, just a myth carefully created by her own refusal to participate in the machine. Greta Garbo didn't vanish because Hollywood rejected her. She vanished because she rejected Hollywood. The actress who became a nun and left Hollywood in Jacques Delors' Heart's story is perhaps the most dramatic spiritual turn in Hollywood history. She wasn't fading, failing, or struggling. She was thriving. She starred in 10 successful films, worked alongside Elvis Presley, and was considered one of Hollywood's most promising young actresses. She had beauty, talent, influence, and a growing fan base. And then, without warning, she walked away from all of it to join a monastery. In the late 1950s and early 60s, Hart was everywhere. She made headlines as the actress who gave Elvis his first on-screen kiss in Loving You, 1957. Her performances in Where the Boys Are and Francis of Assisi showcased her range, and critics praised her natural screen presence. Studios saw her as a rising star with a long, lucrative future. But privately, Hart was wrestling with a sense of spiritual longing she couldn't ignore. While filming Francis of Assisi in Italy, she first visited the Benedictine abbey that would one day become her home. Something about the quiet, the discipline, the sense of purpose struck her deeply. She kept returning, feeling drawn to a life the opposite of Hollywood's noise, pressure, and publicity. Then, in 1963, at only 24 years old, Hart stunned the world. She renounced her acting career and joined the Abbey of Regina Laudes in Connecticut, becoming a Benedictine nun. The media exploded. How could someone with fame, beauty, and success choose such a life? Headlines accused her of being manipulated, heartbroken, overwhelmed, or unstable. Studios begged her to reconsider. Fans sent thousands of letters, but Hart was calm, resolute, and grounded. She later explained that she hadn't abandoned her life, she had finally found it. At the Abbey, she became a respected figure, eventually taking on leadership roles and using her artistic skills to support the community's theater program. She even returned to the Oscars decades later, not as an actress, but as a nun promoting a documentary about her life. Dolores Hart didn't vanish because Hollywood failed her. She vanished because she found a calling stronger than fame. The Hollywood goddess whose death raised more questions than answers. Carol Landis was everything Hollywood claimed to adore: radiant, ambitious, patriotic, and willing to work harder than anyone else in the room. Known as the Ping Girl, and later as one of the most glamorous actresses of the 1940s, she entertained troops during Wabitwi, traveled thousands of miles for USO tours, and brought a sense of American optimism wherever she went. But behind the adoration, her private world was spiraling. And when she died in 1948 at just 29 years old, from what was officially ruled as suicide, nothing about the scene added up. Landis was romantically involved with actor Rex Harrison, a married man whose career was protected like a fortress by studio executives. Their affair was one of Hollywood's worst-kept secrets, but when she realized he would not leave his wife, Landis reportedly fell into despair. That's the story the studios clung to. But investigators noticed inconsistencies immediately. Harrison was the last person to see her alive, yet he wasn't questioned as a suspect. The phone near her body had been wiped clean, no fingerprints. Her friend who discovered the scene said a note was placed a little too neatly. Her housekeeper insisted Carol had been in good spirits earlier that day, and the biggest red flag, the timeline. Harrison claimed he left her at midnight after an argument, but witnesses saw his car at her house again early that morning, hours before her body was discovered. Why did he return? Why did the studio intervene before police arrived? And why did every detail that could tarnish Harrison's reputation quietly vanish from reports? For decades, whispers grew that Landis's death was staged to protect one of Hollywood's most profitable leading men. Whether it was a cover-up of a crime, a panic-induced cleanup of a suicide scene, or something even darker, the truth died with her. Carol Landis, once adored by millions, was reduced to a footnote, sacrificed to preserve Hollywood's golden boy image. The blues legend, whose death was too convenient for the people who benefited Robert Johnson, is often remembered as the man who sold his soul to the devil for musical genius. But the real story behind his disappearance and death is far more human and far more suspicious. In 1938, at only 27 years old, Johnson died suddenly under circumstances that still baffle historians. No autopsy, no medical report, no investigation. He simply dropped dead, and those who stood to profit from his music gained everything. Before his death, Johnson was rapidly rising from obscure juke joints to regional fame. He traveled constantly, wrote with feverish intensity, and his guitar skills were unheard of for the era. But he also had enemies: romantic rivals, jealous musicians, club owners who felt threatened, and white businessmen who saw profit but no need to protect the black artist generating it. The commonly repeated story is that he was poisoned by a jealous husband after flirting with the wrong woman. But witnesses from the night he fell ill say otherwise. They described him collapsing violently, on all fours, howling, and suffering for several agonizing days. Poisoning? Possible. But others point to something darker: exploitation wrapped in silence. Johnson had signed away rights to many of his recordings for pennies. His managers controlled his movements, finances, music, and performances. When he died, those same men inherited the full value of his catalog. Even stranger, Johnson's burial site is unknown. 3 separate graves exist, each claiming to be the real one. Why? Because no official death record was made. The county couldn't document what it didn't care to investigate. A black musician dying in the Jim Crow South wasn't considered important. After Johnson's death, the men who managed him made fortunes. His music inspired the Rolling Stones, Clapton, Dylan, Led Zeppelin, and his recordings became some of the most commercially successful blues tracks of all time. Meanwhile, Johnson himself was erased, while others feasted on his legacy. Robert Johnson didn't disappear into folklore. He was swallowed by a system that found more value in his death than his life. The star who was institutionalized into silence. Frances Farmer was the actress Hollywood loved to tame. Brilliant, outspoken, rebellious, and unapologetically uninterested in the industry's strict behavioral rules, she clashed constantly with studios, journalists, and producers. Her talent was undeniable, her beauty intimidating, and her refusal to smile on command made her an enemy of Hollywood's carefully controlled public image. When she publicly challenged studio contracts and spoke against the artificial nature of stardom, the system framed her not as a thinker, but as a woman losing her mind. Farmer's arrest in 1942 for a minor altercation became the moment Hollywood painted her as unstable. Tabloids sensationalized every detail. Studio executives distanced themselves. Natalie, her husband Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain, Dennis Davern, were on a yacht near Catalina Island. They had all been drinking heavily. Tension was already high. Witnesses reported hearing arguments coming from the boat earlier that evening. Some said Wagner was jealous of Natalie's close friendship with Walken, who was then starring with her in Brainstorm. The official story claimed Natalie simply slipped while trying to reboard a dinghy, but Natalie had a lifelong fear of deep water and would never have climbed into a dinghy alone at night. Her autopsy revealed bruises on her arms and legs, evidence of a struggle. She was wearing a jacket heavy enough to drag her down. Most suspiciously, no one on the boat claimed to hear her fall into the water. Decades later, new testimony changed everything. The boat's captain admitted he had lied during the original investigation, saying Wagner told him to stay quiet. Davern claimed he heard a violent argument and believed Wagner was responsible for her death. Walken refused to discuss the incident for decades, and Wagner consistently shifted details of his story each time he retold it. In 2011, the case was reopened. In 2018, Wagner became a person of interest, yet no charges have ever been filed. Natalie Wood's drowning was not a simple accident. It was a tragedy clouded by silence, power, and fear. And the truth has remained locked on that yacht for over 4 decades. The Hollywood dreamer, whose death exposed the city's darkest underbelly, Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia, wasn't a starlet, a model, or a Hollywood insider. She was a young woman chasing the same dream thousands of others chased, the possibility of being discovered. But when her mutilated body was found in Los Angeles in January 1947, cut in half with surgical precision and arranged in a grotesque, deliberate pose, she became something far more disturbing, a symbol of how Hollywood consumes young women and discards them without mercy. Elizabeth floated through Los Angeles the way many hopefuls did, between cheap apartments, friends' couches, nightclubs, and casting calls. She had no connections, no money, and no powerful men to protect her. That made her vulnerable in a city full of predators who recognized desperation from miles away. She went on dates to get meals, accepted rides from strangers, and trusted people who did not deserve trust. When her body was discovered in a vacant lot, the brutality of the crime stunned even veteran police officers. The media sensationalized her life immediately. Instead of focusing on the killer, newspapers attacked Elizabeth herself, calling her a drifter, party girl, manhunter, and worse. Hollywood gossip columnists, hungry for scandal, rewrote her as a femme fatale instead of acknowledging her as a victim. But behind the headlines, investigators quietly pursued leads that pointed to powerful men. Multiple doctors were suspected because the mutilation was clearly done with medical expertise. A Hollywood nightclub owner was investigated, along with a wealthy family whose patriarch was rumored to have fled the country after interviews. Each time the investigation came close to exposing someone influential, the pressure mysteriously faded and the case shifted direction. And then there's the LAPD itself, already notorious for corruption. Files went missing, witnesses recanted under pressure, evidence was misplaced. By the 1950s, detectives privately admitted what they could never say publicly. Someone high profile likely got away with murder. Elizabeth Short's death wasn't just unsolved, it was silenced. She became a cautionary tale, a headline, a myth. But beneath all the sensationalism was a real woman whose only mistake was believing Hollywood would embrace her instead of consuming her. Her killer walked free. Her story became legend, and Hollywood kept moving, as it always does, pretending nothing had happened. So the next time you watch an old film, hear a famous name, or see a biography that feels too neat and too polished, remember this: behind every legend is a story you were never meant to hear. A story with missing pages, a story rewritten, a story covered in shadows. And as always, stay curious, stay aware, and never be afraid to question the official story. Thank you for watching.